So Fisher Stevens, your new documentary, Before the Flood, tackles the issue of climate change, which has been in the news again recently. I just want to start by asking you about your reaction to the recent news about the Paris Climate Accord.
Incredibly sad, depressing, but not unexpected, knowing that the people that Trump put into place in terms of the head of the EPA, Scott Pruitt, and Steve Bannon being, kind of co-running the country. These two have been hammering Trump to pull out of Paris since day one. So it's too bad he listened to them as opposed to his Secretary of State and business and industry leaders. So that's kind of it's kind of sad, but not unexpected.
Do you still have hope, though? I mean, seeing the reactions from people around the world and here in America, do you still have hope, though, that we can tackle this problem?
Yeah, I have some hope in that, the way that California has stepped up, the way that New York has stepped up, Washington, Massachusetts, the mayors of, I think, 187 cities have stepped up. So that's the good news. But the bad news is that even if they all step up and they all decide to hit the marks, we're still short. So we do need some of the federal government to step up as well. I'm excited by Michael Bloomberg's proposal to kind of have it's separate UN coalition with all these mayors and governors to say, hey, we're going to abide by the Paris climate rules. So I hope that it's really going to be up to us, to me and you and the voters, to pressure our congressmen and pressure our senators to kind of say something. But I do want to discuss one issue that we touch on in the movie, and that is lobbying and lobbyists. And it's very hard, as you see in all that's going on now with fake news and misinformation. The originators of this, or certainly some of the architects of this, are the Heartland Institute, Americans for Prosperity. These are groups funded by the Koch brothers that have been putting disinformation into the ether about climate change because it hurts their businesses since Citizens United was passed in 2010. So what worries me is that they're going to just dump more money into misinforming the public about what climate change does and whether or not it exists or not. That's what terrifies me. So I'm hoping that people who see the film and see how much money is basically being prostituted into our election cycle, so that they'll vote against clean energy, that people will take umbrage and do something about it.
Well, you've been making a lot of these environmentally conscious, environmentally centered documentaries for a few years now, both as a director and a producer. Some more Racing Extinction, The Cove. What draws you to these stories, to make films about them?
Originally, I was drawn to environmentalism by a man named Jim Clark, who was one of the co-founders of Netscape, and Michael Lewis wrote a book about him called The New Thing. And we were dive buddies, and we went diving, and we go to places that he was 20 years earlier, and he showed me that there'd be no fish, or the corals will be dead. And he explained to me what was happening, what climate change meant, how the ocean was being affected. So originally it was more about the ocean, and about the scuba diving was my passion, and I wanted to save the oceans. And the Cove had a lot to do with that. And then I got mercury poisoning because I was eating so much fish, and I was told that it's from what was in the ocean. And that was the beginning of my long journey. And then I had children. So the more you know, it's like the more depressing it gets, so to speak, and the harder that you want to fight, especially when you have kids and you realize now you're not doing it for yourself, but you're doing it for the next generation.
Right. And I mean, you've partnered with a lot of people, notably Leonardo DiCaprio, who produced this film and narrates it. Can you talk about how you guys are coming together to try to put this message out there and using the power of filmmaking in order to do it?
Yeah, Leo. Well, he stars in the film. He doesn't just narrate it, and
Right.
that was one of the conditions that we had working together. Was Racing Extinction was just wrapping up. The last thing I wanted to do was just go right into another climate change film. But when Leo called, I knew that he actually probably knew more about this than I did, and had been fighting this for many more years. And he had a huge audience. And I thought, okay, Racing Extinction has a huge audience, but let's even try to get bigger and make a different film, one that's following one person the whole way through. You know, Racing Extinction, we had a lot of great characters. So he agreed to be in this. He agreed to try to examine climate change for everybody, not just for people who have already been converted, but to try to make a film for the populists and for people that never ordinarily think about it, even people that go see his movies but don't even know that climate change exists. So that was kind of our goal. He was a great partner in that. And then we really were excited when National Geographic decided to join with us, because they said they would blast it out. You know, as a filmmaker, you always want to make something for the big screen, and we made it very cinematic, but you really get the audience on these things and on TV. So we were grateful for them for blasting it out, and they're continuing to blast it out. But, you know, the film is actually screening right now in Bologna for 2,000 people in a square. The film has screened all over the world. It's kind of incredible how Europe and Asia are taking to this film as well. And that was another goal of ours, was to make this about internationalism. Pulling out of Paris has really not been great for not just for the climate, but for the way that the United States looks to other countries. It's so funny how Fox News, I was just watching a retired 4-star general, General Keane, who just got on Fox News and just was talking about how Comey's a liar. But he also said that, you know, people in Europe don't really think about what we do here. That's what this 4-star general told us on Fox, that they don't really pay attention to what goes on here. Well, I have news for him. I have a lot of friends in Europe who were texting me and emailing me and are very concerned about what we did in terms of pulling out of Paris, are very concerned about what goes on here. So we have to just pray and hope that Bloomberg and Jerry Brown and Cuomo and de Blasio's and everybody else, the local governments, step up, keep fighting, and that we fight for our children and don't let these oil interests rule, which we're going back to the 50s again. We've been making such great progress. I just want to tell you that in 2008, John McCain was running against Barack Obama. John McCain ran with a strong climate change agenda. There's commercials. You can look them. You can look them up. Look them up. John McCain believed that climate change was a huge issue, more so than Barack Obama. What changed all that? Citizens United, 2010. Shame.
Yeah, it's really amazing just in my own lifetime seeing the kind of switch that's happened, and all in terms of money. It does not look good, as you said. Not to insert my own opinion in here, but I wanted to go ahead.
No, I said your opinion. We need people to keep speaking out, and especially journalists in the media. You know, the media avoids this. Now they're not. You know, Paris could be a good thing. It may finally be that last step to invigorate people to say, hey, we're not going to take this anymore. You know, go Peter Finch or network on everybody.
Right, absolutely. I wanted to ask you, just from a purely technical standpoint, about assembling this film, because, I mean, you cover a lot of ground and a lot of interviews and archival footage. How do you assemble something like this into, I can't think of any other way to say this, but an entertaining film?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you called it entertaining. That was always Leo and my goal, was to make it entertaining. It was really rough, to be honest. You know, this is a huge issue. We're dealing with many, many different aspects to this issue, to climate change. I wish we could have dealt with more issues. I wish we could have dove into more of a socioeconomic. We get into it with India a bit, and Indonesia and Palau, but, you know, it was very tough. One thing that we realized early on is that if Leo wasn't in the scenes, it wouldn't work. So it was, we went to the Amazon early on, we went to the Amazon. Leo was shooting The Revenant, so he couldn't go. So I went with my crew to the Amazon. We filmed this beautiful tribe of Indians called the Warani that were being pressured to have the oil companies go onto their land. It's a beautiful segment, but Leo wasn't in it, and it just didn't make any sense. His foundation funded this this NGO to stop the oil companies from coming in, but that was the only tie-in. So we realized quickly we needed Leo. He was shooting The Revenant. We loved that The Revenant was kind of part of our story, but we weren't even sure if we were going to use it. But then when the snow had all melted up where he was shooting and he had to go halfway around the world, we said, oh my God, this is terrible for the planet, but great for our movie. So it just started to kind of talk to us. The movie started talking to us. So it was a dance, and there's still stuff in there that stuff we shot that I wish could have been in there. But I'm really ultimately happy with what we got.
Perhaps for another movie, I suppose.
Maybe, yeah, part 2. Maybe we're talking about doing something called The Solutions.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was going to ask, I mean, what's the next step for you guys? Do you have another project in the works, or?
Well, we've been talking about a lot of stuff. We don't have anything officially. I'm working on a couple of things right now myself. I'm very curious about this administration's role, the oil company's role in this administration. So Leo and I are talking about doing something with that, and there are a couple of great people doing great things to counter climate change beside Elon Musk. So we're talking to some people, but we don't have anything kind of locked down yet.
Right.
But we do our daily thing. You know, we're always sending each other articles. We're always, we're in touch with a group of people. We Stand United, this organization that Mark Ruffalo and I and a bunch of people founded that are constantly fighting environmental justice. So we're doing our thing, short films like that. So Leo's been very supportive of those, and kind of he keeps pressing the UN and keeps pressing governments to help fight and combat climate change.
Certainly, I mean, there's an urgency to that. I mean, what would you say?
Yeah, it's never been more urgent than it is now.
Yeah. One of the criticisms we hear a lot from people on the right is that, I mean, we talk about being more environmentally conscious, but, you know, we still are leaving a footprint, an ecological footprint. What would you say to people like that in defense of a greener way of life?
We do leave a carbon footprint. And, you know, there's a great moment in the film where Sunita Narayan, the Indian woman in the film, she kind of lashes out at Leo a bit and goes, you know, it's your consumption, I hate to say this, is what's killing the planet, you know? And Leo's like, yeah, but it's hard to tell people to change. But people have to change, you know? And listen, I wish there were solar airplanes. I mean, I just, you know, I'm flying, I flew here to Los Angeles, not, you know, on a regular commercial jet, but I flew here to screen the film, to publicize the film, to get an award for the film. We all have to travel. I'm hoping that we put more subsidies toward green energy so that we will speed up air travel, flying by, you know, flying solar, and will speed up so that we don't have to use fossil fuels. But yes, look, we're not monks. We are filmmakers. This computer was charged. I don't know where this hotel gets its electricity from. I don't know if it's solar or if it's coal-based or if it's natural gas-based. But yes, it is a fact of life. Now, we can cut down on our use and our travel and our beef consumption. You know, beef is a big thing as well, as we get into in the film. So we all have to be aware. I will say this. The exciting news is we have an app at the end of the film. It's called carbotax.org. And 15,000 people who've seen the film have gone on to carbotax.org and have paid for their carbon footprint for this year or last year. 15,000 people. And including our film, we had a very hefty bill, and we offset it, and it's going to reforesting in Central African Republic, in the Amazon, and in Indonesia to reforestation. So that's kind of been a really big success story out of our film. And I'm hoping it continues. And it's great because every day someone who watches the film online is contributing to our Carbotax project.
It's just those little things that you have to keep doing, and little by little, hopefully some change will happen. I wanted to ask you lastly about your Oscar win for The Cove, not just about what that meant for you personally, but what something like that means for getting these films out there and seen by more of the public.
Well, yeah, you know, The Cove was great, not because it was The Cove, but it really seemed to inspire many films. I can't tell you, like, people like the Blackfish and Virunga, these are two incredible movies. Both the filmmakers came up to Louis or myself and said, you know, you guys really inspired us to make these films. So many filmmakers say that they love The Cove, and that and people said, oh, you know, I went to Taiji, or I went to Indonesia to fight deforestation. That gives you hope. That makes you feel good about what you do. All the Academy Award does is shed light on your film and gives you some publicity. It's hard enough to make a documentary and to get people to see it, but the Oscar and the Emmy, it gives you, it sheds more light on the film, and that's what they're great for, you know. I think awards are great for. It doesn't mean you're the best movie. I don't believe in that. There's so many great movies. It's just subjective, but if it gives you some publicity, you know, that's amazing.
Well, Fisher Stevens, thank you so much, and congratulations on the film and on all your work that you're doing. Keep up the good fight.
You too. Keep up the fight, Zachary. Take care.
You too. Thank you. Have a good one.